Why should they even care about multicultural marketing? But the world of Canada is really changing. And if you think of Canada's national sport, you think of hockey. But you can actually watch a hockey game in Punjabi today. And I can tell you that the people at Rogers are not doing it for their health. They're doing it because there's a large ethnic audience that is acculturating to Canada and are hockey fans. But they're not only hockey fans, they haven't lost, and I'll talk about this later, we call it cultural baggage. They haven't lost their affinity to their home country. Now, if you were going to run an event and you wanted people from around the city to travel like really, really far, like let's call it the Hershey Center in Brampton, okay?
You like in Oshawa.
Or the equivalent, on the other end of the world, right? Or you want to go that far away, okay? And you wanted to pick a night to ask people to come. What would be the worst night of the week to do that? Friday night or Saturday night, okay? So let's use Saturday night, okay? And if it was sort of something that families were going to, or husbands and wives and stuff like that, what would be, other than someone's personal birthday or Christmas or whatever, or religious holiday, what would be the worst night of the year to have an event like that? Other than Christmas.
Snowstorm.
Think of bad weather. Yeah, we had that. But leaving bad weather aside, like what's think of something you would do if you're married or your girlfriend. Sorry, Valentine's Day. Okay, so I want to bring you to Saturday night, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Try to speak to people from around the city. Okay. And to bring them to the Hershey Center, I don't even know what the address is, somewhere over there in Brampton. Now, if you wanted to do something really romantic on a Saturday night, okay, and it was you're bringing your wife to do and watch something on this Valentine's Day, what would be the ideal time of night you would start that program?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. What if I told you the event started 10 o'clock at night and went to 5 a.m. in the morning? You would say, Howard, as you run Taste of the Danforth, what kind of event planner are you? Well, we ran that event in Brampton on Saturday night, February the 14th, at the Hershey Center, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, running till 5 a.m., and we had 4,000 people there watching cricket. And if you don't understand that that's Canada today, and that people have passions that are different than hockey, then you're not understanding the consumer. And any of the students and any of my corporate associates in the room know that the consumer is always king, and that's where it begins. So the world of Canada is really changing. Now, when people talk about multicultural marketing, it gets really confusing, okay? Because people use all kind of words. They talk about multicultural marketing, they talk about ethnic marketing, they talk about diversity, they talk about visible minorities, they talk about new immigrants, they talk about newcomers, they talk about new Canadians. I could spend an hour walking you through all the nuances and the differences. My advice to you is, it doesn't matter. Don't get caught up in the terminology. Just understand that there are different customers out there and they have different needs. That's really what you should focus on. So why should you care? If you're a business student, if you're a marketer, if you're from a corporation, why you should care is because they are your consumer, they are your audience. And if you're business guys, you should be focusing in on the numbers, and the numbers story in and of itself is more than compelling. Okay? 20% of the population is foreign born. That's 1 in every 5. Okay? On average, if you look to last year and the year before, the numbers were higher. Last year, it was 265,000. But on average, 250,000 new immigrants arriving every year. In 4 years, how many new immigrants are in the country?
1 million.
1 million. Great math. 1 million new customers that haven't been mesmerized by your competitors yet. That's 1 million new people to sell to. But guess what? When you read the newspapers and people talk about the numbers, they talk about the 250,000, which is the average number of new immigrants coming, but they're talking about permanent residents. Guess what? You an international student? There's 200,000 international students coming into the country. Is that number getting higher or lower?
Higher.
Where's it going to be? And who's making that decision? The government. Government has said that number of 200,000 international students, it's going up to 385,000. Just international students. And they're not doing it for their health. The schools are doing it because international students pay more money. Why is the government encouraging it beyond the funding? We'll find out in another slide. But on top of that 250,000 permanent residents, people who are applying, and there's different kinds, but despite those 250 and the 200 international students climbing to 385, there's also 330,000 foreign temporary workers in the country. My math tells me that's 780,000. If we looked at last year, probably closer to 800,000 new potential customers. Now, we're a country of 34, 35, 36 million people. That's a huge, huge percentage of your customer base, and they haven't been exposed to your marketing or your advertising, and to many of you, your products. So why should you care about international students? I say because you're business students, and the numbers really should matter to you. And where are they coming from? They're coming from around the world, but if we're focusing in on numbers, they're really coming from Asia, and they're coming from South Asia and the Philippines. And the actual details of all of this really don't matter, and it changes over time. If you take a look at the recent increase, okay, the fastest growing or the largest segment that came in was the people from the Philippines, 13.1%, even more than China and India. Oh, you go, I didn't know that. I see more people from India and from China around the streets. You do, because those are total numbers. This is just the people who are currently coming in, right? So if you're a product that cares about newcomers, if you're a bank, and there's supposed to be who are the bankers in the room? So if you're a banker, you should be caring about newcomers, right? You care about where they're coming from and who they are. Again, in terms of numbers, and this is not something that I necessarily recommend. So I'm here to tell you the practical, tactical reality. Most of the people that I deal with only care about these two guys, South Asians and Chinese. You ask them for a marketing budget against anyone else, they're not spending it at all. And I can give you all of the reasons if you want to ask me later, but that's the reality. But even if you look at those two marketplaces, you've got 1.7 million South Asians in Canada. You've got 1.5 million Chinese. A huge, huge number of the population. So that's why the smart marketers are starting to think ethnic, because the numbers are compelling. And if you look at the larger cities, because most of the immigrants are going to the larger cities, this fancy graph is just to tell you that a large percentage of these cities are ethnic. So if your market is in the urban marketplace as opposed to the rural marketplace, the ethnic population is even more dominant and more important to you. But you have to recognize the diversity within the diversity. The groups are different, within the groups they're different, and even the cities are different. You can't generalize. You certainly can't see because it doesn't really fit the slide, but in Toronto, there's more South Asians than Chinese. And then blacks is the third largest category. If I go to Vancouver, it's sort of the reverse. There's more Chinese, and then South Asians. Blacks don't play a part at all. It's the Filipinos. And if I go to Montreal, it's the black, the Arabs, and the Latin Americans. The Asians and the South Asians are not players. So even looking at your geo-focusing, there's a difference. You don't sort of like say, oh, Canadians, and make generalizations. You have to understand all of the nuances, and you have to understand who your market is and what your market is all about. If we looked at Toronto, you can see how large the Toronto visible minority population is, okay, and what the makeup is. What's even more interesting is look at the suburbs. Okay, I don't know if you can see these numbers here. I can hardly see them with the watch. I'm right next to it. 72% of Markham is a visible minority. That's 3 out of every 4. Okay? Brampton, 66.4%. Mississauga, 53.7%. Toronto, 49.1%.